Hi there, welcome to this week's vlog. Today you're going to watch a time lapse of a window scene with a still life that I'm demonstrating as I walk you through the decisions that I make along the way. I'm jumping right in since the video is longer. It's a very dark and rainy day here, so I'm doing my best to show you the inspiration for this artwork. This bowl was a gift from a wonderful new friend who owns my favorite restaurant here in Sintra, Portugal. And besides being an amazing chef, she is such a talented ceramicist. She made this. She has a dream of owning a pink house like me, so I thought that it would be nice to create that vision of hers into this artwork that I'm sharing with you. I'm using these acrylic paints, and for a pop of color, I'm also going to be adding Luminous Red by Holbein, and instead of black, I'm mixing burnt umber with ultramarine blue. I've also prepped the canvas first with titanium white paint. I let that dry completely, and now I'm adding pink for my underpainting, and I'm covering the whole canvas in this pink, and so you'll see that coming through as I add the next layer of paint. An underpainting makes the whole painting process a lot easier in my opinion. It also adds depth and texture to the painting in a way that is not forced. So here I'm using the dark burnt umber and ultramarine blue to do the plan. And what I love about using these dark lines is that I'm going to be able to save some of them as I continue painting, and that's going to help also with the contrast. I made a sketch of the painting ahead of time in Procreate on my iPad, and the reason I did that is because I had several reference photos that I was using. The pink house in the left photo, the actual window that I used for my inspiration, it's kind of, it has that little indent in the wall that I think is super cool. And I loved my friend's things that she had above it. She loves the color red, and she also loves this French blue on the right. And she also loves art. So she has a bunch of art in her restaurant. And so I just wanted to create something that brought these things together along with a little still life with her bowl. And as I'm painting here, I'm, thinking about proportions. You can see the table just sort of got bigger, and I'm going to make it even bigger as we progress. I also added the chair. It felt like that blue that I had in mind for the whole right-hand side for 1/3 or almost 1/3 of the painting was going to be a little too empty. So I thought it would be nice to add a chair. And so I did that by going to Pinterest in the process of painting this, as what you're looking at, and finding a reference chair that I then used. And then also the flowers, I Googled, or not Googled, but on Pinterest, I searched for a contemporary floral arrangement, and I just came upon this one that had these very interesting shapes. I loved the little flowers that were just a little bit taller than the rest. My friend also has butterflies and dragonflies on her walls that are really charming, so I wanted to incorporate those as well. I know that the pink seems really strong, but here you can see that as I cover it, I'm covering most of it, and I'm just leaving a hint of the pink outside of the black lines, like right now around those butterflies, so that it just sort of feels like there's a softness around them. And that's what I was sort of hoping to go for with the pink. Since I am using these super dark lines for the high contrast, I didn't want it to be so harsh, and I felt a way to soften all that would be with the pink. I almost did it with yellow, and that would have probably worked just as well, but I wanted to emphasize the pink of the house, and I'm going to be leaving that pink background in the windows, and just so the whole thing really reads very pink and very feminine. For the red of the containers, I mixed the alizarin crimson with a little bit of the cadmium yellow light so that they have just a very slight hint of an orangey color. And the other thing I want to mention is that I'm using very little water. I'm cleaning brushes, but I'm also drying them before I apply paint, which is very different than how I've been painting with my gouache, where I've really been having fun watering it down. in my other videos. Here I really want the the color to be very, very pure and very opaque, and I don't want to have any of that wateriness. So I'm making sure that I'm either switching brushes as I go along or I am drying them off. There are white walls in the restaurant, which is why I have that in the background. However, I feel like it's too stark, so I'm definitely going to be adding some toned down yellow, kind of leaning towards a creamy color. And something I want to say now is that when I'm applying paint, and it's not turning out exactly as I envisioned, these are moments where I need to be just really patient and tell myself there will be more layers coming, more layers of paint. And I guess that's what the message I'd like to, share with you is sometimes we have these expectations that the first time we apply the color, it has to look a certain way, and it's just not the case. Painting is about layering, it's about making adjustments. And in fact, you'll see that I end up having to really correct the still life because it's very off. And it's something that can easily be done with paint. It's just paint, and we can paint over it. So with the red table, this is where I add that pop of Holbein in the mix with the alizarin crimson. And you can see that it really gives it kind of an orangey feel, and I've also added some of the yellow. Red is a very powerful color, and because I know that my friend really likes it, I wanted to just emphasize, I've got this red line at the top with the canisters. I wanted to kind of frame out the window by using red in the table. I didn't want it to be the same red as the canisters because I kind of wanted them to pop in their own way. So you'll see that I work the table a little bit. I'll be darkening it up and lightening it up in parts, and then I use shadows to really add some contrast, and it helps the eye lead in towards a still life. So I'm just saying that now because I'm thinking about it. So as I'm putting color on the objects on the table, it's kind of funny to me that I didn't really notice it when I was doing my initial sketch plan with the dark brown, just putting in the lines. So here I'm a little frustrated because I realize that I'm going to have to move something and I don't really know what. So I'm focusing now on the chair, and I'm also realizing that the table and the chair need to be a little more connected. So I'm going to go ahead and paint a little bit more of the pink to block out the parts that I want to correct. So here you can see that I'm basically covering up those things that I'm going to have to paint over. And I want to make sure that I use the same pink that I did in my underpainting so everything looks cohesive. And while I wait for that paint on the still life to dry, I'm focusing now on the window details. The color of the door is actually white, the door on the right, and then the one on the left is brown. And this is where, it's just fun to make art because we can make things whatever colors we want. And I wanted the teal. It's a great complement color to the pink, so I want to make sure that there's that bit of green and that contrast. And I want the doors to be a little more special than the other greens in the artwork, which is why they lean a little bit more towards teal. I think the iron gate, it's fine that I just used squiggle lines in the dark color just to emphasize that there is a pattern there, even though there isn't an exact pattern in my painting. This little house gives me a little bit of a headache because I use colors that are way too bold, and so you'll see me adjusting it as I go along. I need to kind of push it back. I don't want it to jump out, and right now with that red, it really is. Something I love in our neighborhood is that we have these very bright tiled roofs, which really contrast beautifully with all of the pastel colors. And so I definitely wanted the roof to stand out. Now I'm going in and adjusting all the lines that I had to correct from the still life correction. and I'm just, basically reusing all the colors that I did to redo what I need to do. And that includes, I made an adjustment on that window there on the right-hand side of the house. I felt like it was I needed a little more space between the house and that line of the window. I felt like it was just leaning. I can't even remember what it was, but there was just something about it. So I had to put in some pink background paint, and now, you can see that I've adjusted it. Now I'm going in and I'm figuring out, okay, what do I want to do in front of this bowl if it's not going to be the little box that I had. I have a little succulent on my desk that I decided I wanted to use instead. It just sort of happened that after I finished it, I liked how the prickliness of the cactus contrasted against the soft flowers of the bowl. So that was just a happy accident. And I realized here with the bowl that I'm not going to be able to see those flowers against the yellow if I paint them lighter. So what I'm doing is I gave them a little bit of darkness first, and then I'll go in with a very fine brush and add some much paler whitish yellow on top and leave those little flower outlines so they really stand out. And here you can see that I'm beginning to add some darker shadows that I make more pronounced as I progress. And again, that's just so that, what it is I kind of liked the pattern that it was making on the table. And then I thought, oh, it's perfect because it'll feel like it's drawing the eye in towards a still life even more. And you'll see those lines get a little more pronounced and a little bit darker. And then the lighter parts of the table, I want to really emphasize that bright red. I'm using colors that are on the palette. I use some ultramarine blue on the butterflies, and eventually I do change that bigger butterfly's colors. I don't feel like the blue works as well. And this is sort of a stage of the painting where I start to question my decisions, and I start to realize that I don't love the French blue, even though I know that she has the French blue in her restaurant. I decide I really want it to lean a little more towards the green, and I think it's because of, I want more texture on the right-hand side, and you can see that I did that. I put in some burnt umber, and then I also put in a greener version. Now I left a little bit of the blue undertone, so I feel like it works, like around the butterflies especially, they seem to pop a little bit more. So don't be afraid. I guess what I'm saying is, to leave some of your decisions in your painting on some of the previous layers. It just gives the painting, I think, more of a story. It has its own history to tell. For the foliage, at first I block in with some colors. You can see that, I've got that blue and the green and some yellow on the right of the tree. And I'm kind of avoiding doing leaves. And then suddenly I just decide, oh, it just needs leaves. And so I kind of go a little bit nuts. And there's a moment, I think it's now, where I don't love that it feels messy, and now I'm putting in some more pink because I'm regretting that I've lost some of the sky. And so you'll see that I'll make adjustments here. It's very tempting at this point with this window with the leaves and stuff just to paint over the whole thing in the background and start over. But I just decide that there are things about it that I like, and I don't want to ruin those. I like the solid blocks of color with the tree on the right hand side, and I like the blue and the green between the houses. And you'll see that I will add some more dark contrast and some yellows eventually to make the leaves really work. So, I know that doesn't sound very clear or very straightforward, but that's how I go about it. And I'm also adding some yellow and some blue And this is sort of a moment where I think, okay, I think it's going to be fine, you know, with the yellow and the blue, that seemed to make me feel better. And then I added just a touch of that green and some grays to the windows to imply that there's a reflection of, you know, foliage outside. And then back to the bowl, I said I would use a smaller brush to add in some white. And I also, even though it's so minute, the detail, but there are these tiny worms as handles. And so I just want to make sure that there's certain details that I want to just spend a little more time on. I just think her gift was exquisite. And so I want to make sure that I'm highlighting the things that I really love about it. So the canisters all have words on them, and I'm not going to spell everything out, but I'm focusing on the very first letter at least, and then the rest of it is just a squiggle. The thing that I really liked about these canisters is that they have a little bit of a 60s feel to me, like the handle at the very top especially. They're these little kind of rectangular triangles that I really liked, and so I'm not showing you me painstakingly painting them, but there they are. They just have a feeling that I know that my friend will appreciate. I also loved the canister on the far left with the letters PAO, which means bread, and there are these little retro diamond shapes around it that I wanted to also add in. Here I'm just, you know, mainly adding contrast, so I'm emphasizing the darker lines and making sure that everything at the top looks like what it is, with the not so much the color because it's also very small, but more for contrast. So really, you know, I want the eye to see the red first, and then those little details are not as important, I guess is what I'm getting at here. There were two chairs that I used as reference photos from Pinterest. One chair looked kind of like the one that you see, and then this other one had this little blanket tossed on it. And I liked the look of it. I don't even remember the pattern on it. So I felt like in terms of a shape, it was very easy. Right now it still looks like a blob. I need to add a little more shadow work into it, and you'll see that happen. But I usually try to go for things with reference photos that are very simple in their shape. So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I make those decisions about what reference photos to use. And now I'm just adding in some highlights, and again, it's all about contrast at this point. I'm looking around the painting, seeing, okay, where do I need to see a line a little bit stronger or a little bit lighter? So today I'm heading to the art store to get some D-rings and some picture hanging wire for the canvas, and tomorrow I'll be giving this to my friend. So I'm really excited. I'll keep you guys posted next week, let you know what she thinks. It's always a little challenging with art, you know, because it's so personal. So I really took in some of the artwork that she had in her restaurant to make sure that this artwork would fit in. You know, I didn't want to create something that was really different than the things that she likes. So I was sort of treating this artwork like a commission piece. So you guys, thank you so much for your attention. I'm so glad that you're here. If you like this video, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up. Thank you so much for subscribing if you do. And if you have any questions regarding art, I'm always happy to answer them. Happy creating, everyone.